Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm here to speak to you today about one fundamental issue that has lingered for decades and remains at the very core of Nigeria's development journey. The issue is at the very heart of lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty and giving our young people hope. It is about creating better jobs and raising productivity in our economy. By 2030, Nigeria's working age population is projected to rise to 168 million. And to keep unemployment rates at current level, we estimated at the NESG that we have to create 27 million jobs in just 5 years. That's from now to 2030. And that's 4.5 million jobs every single year. And if we succeed, our young population will be the agents of economic transformation and prosperity. But if we fail, unemployment and underemployment will double by 2030, and an entire generation could be wasted. This will be devastating on our economy, our society, and our future. That is why we urgently need a jobs and productivity agenda. One that delivers not just jobs, not just more jobs, but better jobs, anchored on raising productivity. This is what our latest report at the NESG highlights. Today, over 90% of Nigerian workers are in informal employment. This means 9 in 10 Nigerian workers are struggling to make ends meet. And in fact, many Nigerians are overworked, they are underpaid, and they are trapped in vulnerable, low-productive jobs. As the data shows, over 80% of our workers are in sectors and activities with very low productivity. In other words, the least productive sectors employ the most workers in Nigeria. And as you can see from the slide, many of our sectors are clustered within the peripheral quadrants, low productivity and low unemployment, low employment shares. And in fact, for ICT, you would see that at the far end, ICT has high productivity but employs fewer people, while trade and agriculture at the top end employs a larger part of the workforce but has very low productivity. This means that the kind of jobs that will lift people out of poverty are not being created in large numbers in Nigeria today. It also means that productivity across our economies remains very low, holding back growth and shared prosperity. And so this is not just a labor market problem. It's actually a huge developmental challenge that we have to fix urgently. And unless we act with urgency, an entire generation could be trapped in low-skilled, vulnerable jobs that neither lift their families out of poverty nor move the nation forward. But to address these problems, our research identifies 5 root causes, and I'll briefly touch on them. First is the limited depth of Nigeria's private sector. Our private sector, which ideally should be the engine of economic growth, is too small to create the kind of jobs that the economy needs, both in terms of quality and in terms of quantity. In many states, as many of us know across the country and even in the FCT, economic activities are clustered in state capitals and perhaps in a few urban areas. And in several cases, these economies depend heavily on government contracts and government spending. According to the NBS, in some states, the government is the largest single employer of wage earners in the country. And you ask, where is the formal private sector? The absence of vibrant subnational economic hubs means that opportunities are not evenly spread across the country. Nigeria's most important engine for job creation is not firing as it should. Second, we face a huge skills mismatch. Many Nigerians lack the technical, digital, and soft skills to access the few quality jobs available, and employers often complain about the difficulty in finding people with the right skills across key sectors. This mismatch drives brain drain, keeps many stuck in unproductive work, hustling every day below their true capacity. Third is our education system. While millions of Nigerians are out of school, those that are in school are not learning as they should. And in fact, a case where only 46% of children aged 4 to 6 years can name at least 10 letters, as you can see. Just 39% can write 3 letters, and only 43% can count 1 to 20. This is data from the NBS, and this tells us that a learning crisis is unfolding. And as many of you know, if you miss it at the basic level, it becomes very difficult to acquire higher order skills, particularly in areas of science and technology. Fourth, the sectors that drive economic growth do not drive jobs. Finance, telecoms, ICT, crude oil, and a few other sectors that power Nigeria's GDP growth employ few workers. The top 5 growing sectors in 2013 only employ 1.5% of the Nigerian workforce. Meanwhile, you have manufacturing, construction, and a few other sectors that have the capacity to absorb labor in large numbers and create mid to high level productivity jobs. They are struggling. And this is one of the reasons why anytime we hear GDP growth does not really impact the majority of Nigerians. Finally, structural bottlenecks, which we've heard so much today in the previous sessions. Poor infrastructure, high energy costs, limited access to finance, insecurity continue to weigh heavily on businesses. These challenges do not just slow investment, they stifle innovation, productivity, and prevent firms from scaling. But Nigeria's problems cannot be discussed in isolation from global trends. Countries that will dominate the future are those that will win the race in innovation, invest in technology, human capital development, and productivity-driven growth. This means that the race is not just about producing more, but producing smarter. It is about equipping citizens with the skills to thrive in a digital, automated, and knowledge-driven economy. With our population projected to reach 275 million by 2030 and 428 million by 2050, the challenge before us is clear. Nigeria needs jobs, and not just more jobs, but better jobs. And to achieve this, to achieve the 27 million jobs that I mentioned earlier, which translates to 4.5 million jobs every year, our economy has to grow faster. It must grow in the range of 7 to 10% annually, much better if it's even beyond that, far from the current 3% that we've seen in the last few quarters, and maybe above 4% in the last Q2 2025. Key sectors such as manufacturing, construction, professional services, and ICT, we estimate should be instrumental in driving this growth and absorbing more people into productive work. To address all of these challenges and create better jobs in large numbers, we at the NESG have proposed a framework which we called the Nigeria Works Framework. This framework is a blueprint for a jobs and productivity agenda. It highlights strategic pillars and interventions that are needed to unlock better employment opportunities, to raise productivity and accelerate economic transformation. They are skills for productivity, sectoral engines of growth, enterprise-led growth, upgrading the informal economy, data institutional reforms, and productivity as a core metrics for national prosperity. On skills for productivity, we urgently have to reform our technical and vocational education system, modernize training systems, and align them with industry needs. But skills reforms must be tied to the growing capacity of the private sector. It must be tied to structural transformation that creates opportunities for those skills to be deployed. So not just training, but training in the mindset that the growing private sector will be able to absorb those that have been trained. We must implement reforms to open up those strategic sectors which can power job creation, boost productivity, and accelerate industrialization. Imagine Nigeria being the world's largest producer of cassava, and yet our firms spend millions importing industrial starch. Why can't we just turn these products into industrial starch, especially when there's a huge demand for it locally? Who will do that job? Where are the local firms? We urgently have to fix this. We need a comprehensive industrial policy that supports value creation, enables growth of domestic firms, and unlock export opportunities. We must get our most important engine, the private sector, firing on all cylinders. Nations that advance do so because they produce more, they produce better, and more recently, they produce smarter. We must make productivity the central metrics of national competitiveness. It has to be tracked, it has to be measured, and elevated as the foundation of shared prosperity. On the informal economy, anytime you hear people talk about the informal sector, what comes to mind is formalization. How do we get them to pay taxes or bring them into the tax net? How do we make them register with maybe the CAC or comply with relevant government regulations? While this is necessary, the narrative is often incomplete. Development is not only about what small businesses give to the government. It is also about what the government gives to small businesses. And we must move the conversation beyond just formalization. What Nigeria needs is reorganization and upgrading of the informal sector. This means building new and affordable markets, training business owners with the skills to grow, providing them with affordable finance, and offering incentives that raise productivity. These businesses should not be ignored. They are too important to our economy and to our people. And the responsibility has to go both ways. Small businesses, they must feel the impact of government decisions positively. They should be excited when a president or a governor signs a budget because they know it means better road, better power, better markets, and better opportunities. Development has to be felt, not just read in reports or policy documents. In all of these, collaboration is central. The government cannot do it alone. The private sector cannot do it alone. Academia cannot do it alone. We need all hands on deck. We need a coalition committed to building an economy that works for all. And still on collaboration, briefly. Today, we often see so many well-intentioned initiatives, but too often they operate in silos. For example, the Ministry of Communications, Innovations, and Digital Economy, they have the remarkable 3MTT program, which the target is to train 3 million youths by 2030 in digital skills. The Ministry of Education has its own training programs. The Federal Ministry of Labor, Employment has its own. The Ministry of Youth have theirs. But without coordination and alignment within federal government, and even between federal government and state government and other stakeholders, these fragmented initiatives may fall short. Skills development has to be unified under a common jobs and productivity agenda. Otherwise, we risk duplicating efforts and wasting scarce resources. And just as coordination is critical at the federal level, it is equally essential at the regional and sub-national level. Opportunities must not be limited to Abuja or Lagos. Prosperity must be spread across the nation, with vibrant economic hubs in every region. And to achieve this, we have to move our sectors from peripheral activities to efficiency champions, and from stagnant giants to elite sectors that truly become engines of growth and productivity. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the call before us is clear. We must move our country's employment landscape from hustle to decent work, from vulnerability to stable, high-paying jobs, from potential to prosperity. We invite you to engage deeper with our findings, but more importantly, let us work together to turn these ideas into action. The cost of inaction is too high for us to bear, and the opportunity before us is too great for us to miss. Thank you.
To join Dr. Erumebor on stage for the presentation of the report, please let me welcome our chairman, NESG, Mr. Niyi Yusuf. We also welcome our CEO, Dr. Tayo Aduloju. Board members here present, Mr. Nana Ude, Ms. Amina Maina, Vice Chairman, NESG, Mr. Moboyede Olusoyan, former CEO, Mr. Laoye Jayola, our former Chairman, Mr. Aswe Godalu, CEO, Stanbic IBTC, Mr. Wole Adeniyi, Mrs. Wonola Adetayo, and of course, His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Your Excellency, Governor of Nasarawa State, Your Royal Majesty, Sir, Engineer Jani Ibrahim, Chairman of the Organized Private Sector, from hustle to decent work.